Good morning, good day to everyone. Today I will be presenting just a case study on the pipes of Philippines, answering the question will there ever be a role on hydrogen or hydrogen-derived fuels on powering not only the grid, but also off-grid islands for archipelagic countries like the Philippines? So, um, so as you know, it has been a great challenge not only for the Philippines but also for different countries around the world that are very geographically challenged because they are hard to connect to domain grids. And this has been happening in the Philippines, even though we have high solar resource potential. We have a lot of islands where we have 7,000 islands. We have 616 microgrids still not connected to the grid, and these are big islands with large communities. And there's injustice on that lack of electricity access. And also, aside from geographical challenges, the small markets on these communities actually bars them from having renewable energy on their system. And aside from other social aspects that exist on why electrifying these areas are still not fully electrified. And actually, we're still paying, I mean, the grid consumers are paying for the difference on the cost that diesel reliance, because these islands are highly diesel reliant, the grid consumers are still paying for that difference. We call that OCME, Universal Charge for Missionary Electrification, but just to fair, to even the cost of electricity. And there have been some studies that have looked on how to solve this. And on the middle, basically, it highlights that even though we try to establish microgrids powered by renewables for the smaller islands, they are still will be highly dependent on diesel because variable renewable energy still needs some support, either diesel or batteries. But battery is expensive for their scale, and there has been this study of trying to connect them with submarine cables, but not all can be connected, and there's still a lot of microgrids existing there that will still fall on this scenario, diesel reliance. So, and then there's hydrogen. Our government look at what if we try putting hydrogen on our energy system. And there has been this study looking at what if we produce hydrogen on the different parts of the country, since we have a lot of wind and solar potential. But we would like to extend this study because this approach has been islanded and it did not consider the grid. That's why we we try to answer this question. Can locally produce hydrogen, I mean, establishing a local market for hydrogen generated from the grid can have a demand from off-grid. Basically, that's what we're answering here. And since we're talking about the grid compared to this previous approach, which is islanded, we use PyPSA. We take advantage of that and we try to model the Philippine grid. We have good data with that. Thanks to our local market operator, we have demand from the actual buses, and we have single line models to replicate the grid basically. And we are able to validate this by looking on the market prices, the LCOE generated by the model as well as the generation mix as shown here. So moving forward, we try to project some future scenarios based on the baseline model that we had. And then, so basically what we did was we tried to implement some CO2 reduction. The amount to the amount of CO2 reduction in the future scenario, and then the generators that we would like to add, if we would like battery, and if we would like to have hydrogen as storage or just hydrogen as a demand, basically, this is what it does. So basically, at the beginning, we just let the model do all of those without any constraint. I mean, without any barriers to not do any extending energy generator, except from the CO2 reduction. And we saw that for the grid side, hydrogen doesn't find a place to act as energy storage or a P to X to P assembly. Primarily because if you're going to compare battery storage alone compared to an assembly of hydrogen which was composed of fuel cell plus an electrolysis to convert, electrolysis and fuel cell to convert back hydrogen to electricity, and plus the tank, it's much more expensive. So what we saw is uh, fuel cell will never will never have a role on our grid so far as the results were concerned. But another thing that we observe is that as CO2 reduction increases, the 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 electrolyzer capacity also increases. But for as the demand increases, actually the battery size doesn't increase that much. And this is actually an effect later on the prices, as I'm gonna show. On the LCOE, actually, as we increase the demand, actually there's no that big negative impact, but on higher CO2 reductions, it actually was able to decrease the levelized full system cost of electricity, because it's basically already using the curtailable electricity when you have high VREs on the system, as shown on the left part of the figures here. And when we try to look at the price depending on the demand, the price depending on the production of the system, if we're going to impose that, okay, the grid should produce this quantity of hydrogen to send to the off-grid islands, we generate this, the marginal cost of hydrogen on the production of the different buses, basically on the different part of the grid. And we can see that when there's no CO2 restraint, it's low, as well as if there's high, if CO2 restraint is 100%, they're very low. But when they reach to 50% up to 90%, that's the time when it goes up, because basically what happens there is, I studied this part, the basically the storage, as you reduce the coal capacity, the storage becomes stressed, and it needs to dispatch, especially the battery storage system. It needs to take the role of the missing coal dispatch capacity. And then as you further increase and coal capacity decreases, there's less flexibility in the system, increasing the price of your hydrogen here. And then when you have a lot of basically curtailable cheap electricity from VREs, it goes down. Basically, that's the electricity that was used to generate this hydrogen on the right side here. And actually, on the curtailment side, just like the LCOE, we can see here, on this part, on the middle part, there's not much different. But if you're gonna really compare this, the solar, there's a significant, not that big, but significant percent. I think 1,000 gigawatt hours of electricity being converted to hydrogen on these two parts. Yeah, so let's look on the off-grid. So basically, we already been able to generate this marginal cost versus production. When we look at the off-grid, we try to model them. We use data from a previous study for all 616 islands. And the market is around 360 megawatts. And we found out when we tried to model this, and by varying the price of hydrogen, the total market available, supplyable by when we try to find the intersection, it's around 90 megawatts. That's already a third of the total off-grid demand, which is actually significant already. And then we identified the places where this hydrogen was being produced, as shown here. And when we try to transition these islands, actually, the LCOE actually increases because it's not the optimal solution. But as you can see here, it increases by 10 euros per megawatt, but it drastically reduces CO2 of the system because you're removing basically diesel consumption by 90%. It's really significant. So my main key takeaways is basically there's a role for hydrogen, maybe not on the grid as a storage, but on transitioning the off-grid islands to make it more greener. I mean, even though it we're gonna make the LCOE a little bit expensive, like 10 euros per megawatt, but it can still decrease because the demand here was not assumed to increase. So this will increase, so that will change. And um, yeah, we believe that hydrogen can have a role if there will some supportive policy that will be implemented, especially with the recent framework that has been released. I think there's a need to have some technical values to be attached on that framework to make this thing really possible and make sense. Yeah, so these are the things that we would still like to look at this analysis because this is just a small case study. Most specifically, the demand growth of the island, the demand growth on these islands, and uh, looking at the cost of transportation of hydrogen. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it. There can be a role for hydrogen for off-grid, and I'm open for your questions.
Hi, this is Modi. I'm dialing in from Abuja. A fantastic
Mhm,
present. I was in Philippines last year and I understudied electric cooperatives. Have
mhm.
you considered how all of this could sort of have an alignment for people that are, one, underserved, two, how would that sort of work with the electricity cooperative model?
Yeah, actually, I just talked with them last week. I think first thing is, I mean, I'm trying to work with them on the modeling part. That's why I'm actually working outside teaching cooperatives how to model their system because it's you model a microgrid, you're not talking about something that's big, so they can really handle it. No one will do it for them. And the biggest part on working with ECs is not just the technical, it's actually the social aspect because um, uh, usually yes they lack the technical skill and usually they also lack the technical know-how on how to manage the technologies that we're trying to implement, especially the renewable ones. And that's why it's hard to like bring a wind turbine or a battery or even a solar panel that no one can really know how to repair. So on the long time these systems just broke down and then you need to go back to the diesel generation. That's the reality on these islands. It's more on a social technical skill building challenge that we also need to also solve on those communities.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely share the same sentiment. I wasn't expecting
Mhm.
it. Well, I'm happy to take up this conversation because we have lots of similarities with what you're facing. Though we don't have islands in Nigeria, the socio-technical
Mhm.
problems are very much aligned. So I'll probably shoot you an email if you could drop me your email in the chat box.
Yeah, sure. Let's stay connected. Thank you.